So yeah, I was checking the conditional to make sure it didn't include women, veterans.
Oh, no.
This one is specifically for justice.
Yeah, that's the language they're using now, just involved. And none of that technically is, like I said, it's in there as far as the legislation. This is what you see OCA pushing this, what you're trying to see them push.
Not even the legislation.
No. I'm talking about the point you made earlier about the community center.
Legacy.
Yeah, legacy. That's not, none of that's in there because thinking about it, they can't. But they've been, yes, please. They've been advocating for that too. Because you hear Tremaine and all advocate for it. It's not.
Well, she says very clearly
I might be the only person that truly needs this microphone. It's only because my voice is hoarse. But I will definitely grab some water. But I wanted to introduce the panelists. I want to make sure everybody understands why we're here today. Hello, Regina. Thank you, Regina, for helping us put this together. We have to thank Manhattan Community Board 10 and the Harlem Business Alliance for allowing this to happen. My name is Tariq Buds. I'm a entrepreneur, a marketing professional. I own a distribution company called Population Control. We import, export products, accessories, smoke accessories from overseas to America and America back overseas. I've been working in the cannabis business 7 years now. Yeah, about 7.5 years now, largely through marketing, events, promotions, and distribution. I have been, with the help of the Harlem Business Alliance, going for my own license. And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing this with them today. We are collaborating with them as they help us and are helping everybody that's here. So we're providing information for you. This is free. This is for the community. So once again, please clap it up for Manhattan Community Board 10 and the Harlem Business Alliance. The young lady to my left, her name is Saki Fenderson. I will let her introduce herself very shortly. The lady next to her is Nicole Ndaye. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Close enough, okay. And the gentleman next to her is Charles Johnson. We have put together an esteemed panel for you to go over some of the basics, but it will get very intricate because that is what they do, okay? So first, Saki.
I'm actually gonna let the brother gather and start since he's a representative of Community Board 10 and they're one of the sponsors of the event.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Charles Johnson. I serve on the Economic Development Committee for Community Board 10, but I'm also the chair for Public Safety for Community Board 10. It's been a privilege to be a part of these conversations. As you all may know, we had a cannabis event or forum last month where we invited the chairwoman, Tremaine Wright, as well as the executive director, Chris Alexander, to sit on a panel, and we were discussing health law, just like I said, informing the community about what's about to happen here. And the goal was for that to be the first of many conversations and dialogues that we have. So the goal is to literally have something, every month or so, whether it's going to be a workshop, whether it's going to be a forum or something to that extent, to help prepare the community for it, for what's about to happen in Harlem, but also to make sure that we sustain and we're keeping track of what licenses are actually going out to the community, and providing whatever resources that we have. So I'm excited for that. Thank you guys for coming. Also too, and from that perspective, and then from an entrepreneurial perspective, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lease Spots Incorporated. It's a B2B cannabis transportation and logistics software company. So right now we're developing a software platform to help simplify the distribution needs between cannabis businesses in New York. And that's going to spearhead a whole bunch of other things that we can talk about. But thank you guys for being here and looking forward to the conversation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Jai. I'm a hemp grower here in New York State. I have 10 farms under my license. I grow hemp with the Amish. And I am looking to transition into the adult use as part of the conditional licenses that have been awarded. I'm just waiting pending approval, and I will be growing for adult use. I manage a quad crop operation, so I have the ability to breed the seeds. I also have the grow license, the retail license, the distribution license, a weight master license, and a nursery license. 2 licenses that I don't have, which is the conditional and the processing, and it's just a matter of them being approved. But I'm here just to spread the information. I did a lot of work in this industry, so we don't have to. So I just have like a lot of knowledge and information that I'm here willing to share. In addition to that, be realistic about what's going on in this industry. in order for us to really take advantage of the opportunities that New York has to offer, we have to know what they are and know where to find them, you know? Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just here and I'm thankful and I'm happy that see some faces in the room, and I'm just excited, you know, to see what New York is going to do. So I'm also the chair of the New York Growers and Processors Association of the Capital Region of New York City. So I manage, you know, the committee of the 5 boroughs. We host events, and it's a trade association, so they give a lot of information in regards to all aspects of the industry, growing, processing, retail, distro, a lot of the ancillary businesses in cannabis. We do events. We have an event it's sold out actually, but it's an event for MJ Unpacked, and which is a trade show that's here at the Hilton, and I'm there. I kind of ran from there to get here to see you guys. So I'm just thankful, you know, thank you.
Hello, all, I'm Saki. I'm gonna take my mask off so you can see me. Obviously, I'm not gonna use this. So I put the mask on so I wouldn't contaminate the mic, but you all can hear me, yes?
Yeah.
And I'm more than 6 feet away from all of you.
We good.
My name is Saki. I think this is my 2nd or 3rd time speaking here at Harlem Business Alliance. Harlem is special to me. My father's family's from up here. And as you all know, because of the gentrification here, none of them live here anymore. They've all been pushed to the Bronx. But my holidays and special times were here. So I have a special place in my heart for Harlem, even though I live in Brooklyn now. So I'm excited to be here to share yet again. I have been in cannabis for 11 years. Cannabis is actually my 4th career. The very first thing I ever did was social justice and organizing. I come from a family of organizers, so I planned my first march on the State House when I was 16 years old. I've done food service, I've done film, and I'm here in cannabis. I have sold cannabis for 11 years. So I have been part of the market, the pre-existing legacy Black market, whatever you want to call it, right? But that also afforded me the time, the flexibility to advocate for the reforms and the laws, the business legalization, what we have and what we will have here in New York. But I also made sure that educating and sharing what I get from all these other places with the community was integral. Is integral not only for the success of a sustainable market, but for the health and wellness of our community and our people. So I've been fortunate enough for cannabis and my partner to allow me to be able to do that for the past 11 years as well. So.
Clap it up, clap it up. I warned you, the panelists, our panel is very esteemed, very experienced, and they have tons of knowledge for you all. I do want to start with something very basic. I'd really like to see by a show of hands who is familiar with OCM. Yeah, about a third. Okay. OCM is the Office of Cannabis Management. That is definitely the place where you should be getting all of your resources when it comes to cannabis in the state of New York. And I know that he has and she both have something to say regarding that because of how important it is, but I'm stressing that to you today. After today, you will look up the Office of Cannabis Management and you will become familiar. You will follow exactly what they're doing, all of the steps. They actually lead you in the right direction. Harlem Business Alliance has furthered our involvement with that office. So I implore you to find out more information about the Office of Cannabis Management. If you have anything extra to say in regards to the office, no, that's fine. Do you have anything extra to say in regards to the Office of Cannabis Management?
So there is a area for you to get text messages from, but be very clear. This is a governmental website. So it'll literally take you to a page, it'll take you back to their page. They'll be like, how to get a job, take you to the Department of Labor. And then the Department of Labor will take you right back to the Office of Cannabis Management. So be aware, the biggest resource in the access of that page is monitoring what they're doing. They now have included something called Cannabis Conversations, which is supposed to give like facts about cannabis. Some of the facts are just a little skewed toward some prohibitionist thinking, but there are facts on it, right? And then there's also the place where you can get the board meetings, the transcripts of the board meetings, and you'll be notified about when the next board meetings are. This level of transparency has to exist in most governmental forms, right? There's also a place there where you can apply for the licenses that are available, as well as read the proposed regulations. So those are the best resources for you on the site. But if you think you're gonna get to that site, and they're gonna actually tell you how to do stuff.
It's informational.
Yeah. No, I can speak now. Just to add to what Saki was saying, Charles just showed me yesterday where to find something. I familiarized myself with the laws. You know, one of the things that helped me with getting the licenses and doing all what I've done was the information, doing research. I got this business in 2018, and it was based on me getting a medical card and going to the dispensary, spending $1,000. And that, to me, was insane. And throughout that whole time, you know, they kept promising to open up the medical again, because they only allowed a certain amount of people to get the license. And yeah, 10, absolutely. And it never happened. So, you know, as I'm looking to try to get in, you know, I read the commodity report that Cuomo put out about hemp, and I immediately changed my plan from pharmaceutical medical to hemp and CBD. No, hemp and fiber, because CBD wasn't actually open. So as I'm looking for my name on the list, voila, CBD opens up, get an amendment, and I got licensed to CBD all within the same time frame. That was 2018. 2018, I had this like, you know, piece of paper, what I'm gonna do with it. I don't own no land, you know. I have farm experience, but I just didn't have the land. So I met the Amish at an event with Cornell, and just meeting them, you know, it kind of went to where, you know, now I have a group of people, because it's very labor intensive, you know, thinking on a farm and grow cannabis, it's very, very labor intensive. So you
It's
have
not a community garden, y'all.
yeah, gardening is fun, farming is hell. And I mean, you know, when you think about putting these plants in the ground or even doing the proper steps in order to get going, it's a lot. Even to hold these licenses, it's a lot. It's a lot with compliance, it's a lot with reports, a lot of things that you have to do. So if you don't, you know, have someone that, if you can't do it, then you have to find someone that could. You know, my landowner, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Corbin Hill Food Share. That's my landowner. He provided me with land when no one else did. He's a black man that owns a farm upstate New York. His name is Dennis Derrick, but he gave me the opportunity, you know, to farm on his land. And
Can you all hear her in the back?
Yeah.
If I may ask if you could speak a little bit for the live stream.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so he gave me the opportunity to, you know, farm on his land. And with that, you know, it was right in the vicinity with this group of Amish, you know, people. So that's what kind of helped, just having resources and share resources. And if anyone know anything about the Amish, they do a lot of things, you know, regenerative. They don't use a lot of equipment. They use their horses and carriages and things. So it's really, really sustainable. So being working with them, it gave me a really big advantage, a big, huge advantage, you know. And if you're a cultivator, you know, nothing about cultivation, I suggest you start in a community garden, because that's where I started at. In the community. I'm sorry?
Derek?
Yeah, Dennis Derrick of Corbin Hill Farms. He is he's from Harlem actually. Well, he's actually from Trinidad, but he lives in Harlem. You know, but he you know, owns Corbin Hill Farms, and that's where he ultimately gave me my shot to get started.
Charles, you want to add on to about OCM?
Yeah, just real quick, you guys. One thing that I've noticed too, just looking at Jersey as well, is that with their control board, they actually list out the dates of their meetings, the times and everything else like that. With OCM, you actually have to literally sign up for it. And it's so weird. It's like a secret party type thing, because they'll email you the same, like the day of, you're like, oh, by the way, there's gonna be a meeting at, at 1 o'clock or later on, or, the previous night. So it's really important to just, like I said, just sign up, email, and then have that as a special thing so where you're constantly seeing it. And then also too, and I'll share this as well later on, but there's fact sheets too, simple fact sheets, because there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of, even the legislation, there's a lot of paper to actually read, and they simplified a lot of that stuff too. As far as like frequently asked questions, fact sheets, and from our understanding, speaking with Chris Alexander, OCM, is that this is going to be a continuous thing, as far as just education and continuously trying to include as much material. But like I said, it's not just readily accessible, easily accessible. You really have to kind of do some kind of digging type thing. So I'll implore everybody to really get familiar with the with the website, because it's a lot of stuff that's, like I said, that's hidden in there, and some stuff is in the obvious and some stuff's not.
This 128-page document right here, that's the cannabis law.
And that's just the law. That's just the
That's the
law.
one with my notes
I know, I
and
got
last.
And that's just the law.
That's
That's not
just the law.
including the regulations that 60+ pages, and that's each license has a regulation.
That 35-page document there, that is proposed regulation
Yeah.
for the adult use retail license. Mary, how long is the conditional hemp license?
Ooh. That was 60-something pages.
Yep.
And I'll say for that process, when we did it, we were the first to get our cannabis license to grow. The timeline of everything is really important to note on the farming side of the whole. I would love to really talk about this, because the growth setup for outdoor light depth, greenhouse that farmers are gonna have to work with. The idea of trying to line up to a schedule with proposed regulations not out yet, or schedule for when things are gonna open on the schedule, is important, because you can't use, for people that are thinking about growing, you can't use indoor genetics in outdoor situations. It doesn't work like that. So a lot of genetic orders for how the plant is going to mature outdoors or in a greenhouse situation, those orders have to already be given, that out of the 130+ farmers that are supposedly submitting to submit, you have to be able to start your plants in the ground. Right now, we're starting in 2 weeks to line up for the grow time. So again, there's a big transitionary period of all this application filling out and waiting, which might take 4 weeks, might take 5 weeks, might take 6 weeks. It only took about 4 weeks for us, where you have to raise capital if you don't have the capital. You got to have an understanding of putting in orders to have things ready to go, because you want to be on schedule for when the market is scheduled to open to accept your biomass, which is the flower you're producing, or if you have a processing partner, what type of extractions you're going to make, and having those IP formulas ready to go.
These grow people got a lot to say. You notice that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times they're talking to plants. So they get a chance to express all this knowledge to us. They get a chance to do it. They're happy about it. All right, so the point of the workshop and panel today is to talk about what's next. Now that I have all these options, you can hear all of the people that have knowledge and have studied, really, if you get familiar with the laws, it really will help you. And of course, OCM will help with that. But really, what's next? So next is really finding out what it actually takes, what they're looking for in an application for a retail, which is coming up next, or even a cultivation, which is coming up soon. I think distribution is next. But anyway, what's next is really finding that out. So maybe pulling your criminal record. Obviously, with social equity, they're looking for people with criminal records. If you don't have, obviously, we'll get a little dip into that, maybe a little later, but we can do that. Is you can have family members, or maybe your father, or somebody. There's a lot of ways to actually go about it, but it has to be legit. It will have to be a part of your brand, as an understanding.
So I want to clarify a couple of things here. women. This does not mean LGBTQIA. This means justice-involved people. So if you have had a low-level marijuana with an H, not a J, marijuana conviction, and that difference is the criminal. If you do anything legal, it doesn't say cannabis, it doesn't say marijuana with a J. If you get an arrest, it's marijuana with an H, okay? So if you've had a low-level marijuana conviction, or you are a family member of somebody who has a conviction in New York State, you qualify to apply for this license. Now, Charles brought a point up in our discussion earlier. There are also other parameters of this, this license. One of the other parameters is that you have to prove that you have 2 years of successful business practices. So if you own a barbershop, or you are a tax preparer or something, right? 2 years. But it also means that you could be partnered with somebody who has that 2 years of experience. The stipulation is that you, the justice-involved person or family member, has to own 51% or more of the license. Okay? Now,
Oh, no, yeah, just one thing, just to be clear too, she's talking about dispensary retail
Yes.
licenses. That's what she's talking about now, because right now they have conditional regulations that are out now, and you have until May 31st to do your public comment section, meaning that as a public, you can literally comment and say, hey, I don't like this about the law, or I don't like this about the regulations. Why is this that, things to consider. You have till the 31st of this month to do that. And that information is on OCM as well, but I just want to be clear, she's talking about dispensaries.
so these are proposed.
Yes.
I didn't mean to make it seem like these are the actual regulations. So when they make a proposition, and this is a lot of information, if you're wondering why you didn't have to comment about the hemp license, because no, they did. That was passed by the legislature.
Oh,
We didn't-
Yeah.
So what they did is,
it was part of research.
they put it into a vote between the Senate and the Assembly. And they did this because they didn't want to have to wait 60 days to get the law passed and then a potential other 45 days after that. Because as Mary mentioned and Nicole mentioned, growing is so time and light and seasonally sensitive that if they had waited that long, there wouldn't be any New York flower available for their hope to have the stores open by the end of this year, okay? So 2 very key points. If you're thinking of being part of the first 100 licenses, justice involvement, spouse, child, sibling.
Yes, sir.
Hold on. I want to be very clear. It's a, hold on. I want to be very clear. Okay, to be clear, so that we're not messing any of this up. Adult use, conditional cultivator license, 52 awarded. I apologize. I had this open and then I scrolled.
It's okay. Did you want to add to that? Let's go a little bit about it.
Oh,
Just in terms of.
yeah, just, I know that, if you did have the charges in New York, you can go to 110th Street and pull your background or pull your family member's background. Just to get that, to have that as part of proof of the arrest, and then,
Expungement. Expungement, they've been working on automatic expungement for people who were arrested prior to March 31st, 2021. If you do go for expungement, please do not destroy your records. I know it sounds like that's what you want to do. You want to have a record that your record was expunged. Because if there's some computer paper trail somewhere down the line, and you go, no, but they expunged it, and that's destroyed, they don't have proof that it's expunged, okay? But you do need to go check and make sure that you were expunged.
I'm glad you brought up expungements too, to piggyback off that, just to let the community know, we're actually organizing an expungement clinic in the next couple of months. Just been talking to some of our attorney colleagues, and we're organizing that. We actually have some spaces that we're looking at. So that portion is going to be, there's going to be further dialogue about the expungement piece though. But one thing I want to just throw out there as far as expungements, and this was brought up by the Manhattan DA's office and the Bronx DA's office at our previous forum. It's supposed to be an automatic expungement for depending on the offense, but they have up to 2 years to do the automatic expungement. And what's going to happen is you're going to probably just get a letter, type of thing though. But the other part of expungement that they're not talking about is that, when it comes to the threshold, when it comes to the amount that you were charged with and possession with, you can still get other higher amounts expunged. It's just a different process that you have to go through. And that's one of the things that we're going to focus on at the expungement clinics. And you guys are going to get information about that as well. But it's a little more nuanced though. But yeah, the automatic expungements, yes, they are that. DA's office, Bronx and Manhattan DA's office have been doing that. But it could take up to 2 years, and like you being informed about it, it may come in a letter, that type of thing. So if you already have had, expungements or going to psychic foreigners, you definitely want to keep that paper trail because they're going to be asking for everything. And then plus it's just good for you to know for as far as peace of mind. But that's all.
Wonderful. Moving along, we have Q&A at the end, sir. Moving along, basics. That's what we're going through, but it gets intricate. Make sure you certify your business, LLC, partnership, the like, and start banking. You need to establish a track record, a payment history. At least for me, going for a retail license, these are some of the things that we had to do is establish a payment history, our taxes over a 3-year period. These things are important to know, and you have to understand that there are now limited banks that are dealing in cannabis through the SAFE Act and the Secure and Fair Enforcement Act.
Yeah.
Secure and Fair Enforcement Act. Really, they also do a study every year to make sure that minority businesses, not just people of color here, we're talking about Asians, we're talking about the Latin community as well. They are doing studies though to make sure that through this SAFE Act, minorities are getting a fair shake using this program. I totally understand as an attorney from your standpoint, looking at some of these acts and these policies and knowing that we're really trying to do a better job than California did, than Oregon did, than Denver did. But in reality, once we actually lay out the law, the dominoes are going to fall because this is the Empire State. We are the capital of the world and people are really looking at us. But looking at banking and that hurdle for certain people, how can you get over that?
You made an excellent point. This is something they teach us in law school too. There's 2 jurisdictions in this country that pretty much dictate like how the laws are going to be in the country. Even when you're talking about precedent, things of that nature, it's New York and California. So if you think about the NCAA, the reason why these kids are getting paid for their name, likeness, and image is because the Supreme Court in California passed, they ruled in favor of students, and that's why you see it across the board. New York the same way with all types of things though, but people are really looking at us, and one thing I'm noticing from OCM and just government here is they really want to be the model when it comes to social equity, because there's no social equity program in the country that works. A lot of the West Coast people that you see now, they're trying to play catch up to do that, but the initial intent when it came to legislation wasn't drafted that way. New York is one of the few that, Jersey has some of that as well, but New York really has done a good job at attempting to do that. Now we have to make sure that we see it all the way through. Going to the banking part, that's extremely important because, and it's going to have a ripple effect on everything, because we're talking about any institution that receives federal type of funding, because cannabis is still a Schedule I drug, they're not going to be able to participate. So you're also talking about, well, let's just focus on banking right now. You're talking about these major banks, as far as like Chase, TD, things of that nature. Technically, right now, you can't go to Chase or TD or any of them and tell them that you're trying to do a cannabis business because it's illegal. However, there are selected banks that focus on cannabis friendly, as we like to call them. As well as credit unions, and we plan on doing a workshop as far as bringing them in so you can get more information about that. But, you know, you have to try to, I would say, go to those particular cannabis friendly banks, because if you open something with Chase and you have 2 years of whatever, it gives them justification to close that, you know, to close your account down. And plus, you're supposed to be, you know, upfront and all these other things about your business matters, though. But that's one thing. So, but the really the biggest thing is the schedulization of it on a federal level, because right now they're essentially saying, based on the scheduling, cannabis is more deadly than fentanyl. That's based on scheduling right now, how it's listed though. But if the minute that they deschedule, that opens the door for the Safe Banking Act, that opens the door. I mean, even though we're getting some protections here in New York State, which is good, locally, it still doesn't, you know, impact, you know, the federal aspect, as well as IRS too, though, because there's a thing called 280E, where if you're a plant touching business, you can't have certain deductibles as, you know, a regular business will be able to do, which impacts, you know, your gross income like dramatically. But like I said, the biggest thing is right now identifying those credit unions and those smaller banks that are actually that are for it. Your congressmen, your representatives or whatnot here, Esplanade, all these other ones, we need to make sure that they're pushing it down there. Our senators, Chuck Schumer, all of them are pushing it down on a federal level too, because it's going to trickle down. But yeah, the banking thing is going to be extremely important, because that also goes into your MBE certifications and things of that nature. It's a ripple effect.
So actually, can we just touch base really quickly on a few things that Charles spoke about federally and how the state is trying to address them here for your practical use of what's next, right? So if you are one of the 100 lucky people to get a conditional license, the way they proposed it is you are in a partnership with the state of New York. So the state of New York is negotiating and being the leaseholder on the store property that you would be working out of, okay? So you don't have to worry about the issue of, which he didn't get into, some landlords are not going to be able to rent to you if they have a mortgage with a major bank, okay? So one of the great things about Harlem Business Alliance, for example, Harlem Business Alliance was part of the campaign to legalize. So Regina was very active and understands the law. She has been, I'm sure, developing relationships with people who might own properties who are interested outright, or credit unions who you can do this with. Another thing that the state has done is they have rescinded tax code 280E on a state level. So where you're not going to be able to write it off on your federal taxes, you can write off your flour and your other business expenses for your cannabis business, okay? So these are things that they thought about to help alleviate some of those issues. So you'll have an easier time getting a property, an easier time getting a bank account. And because you are not going to be able to get a loan from any banking institution, they've created a $200 million fund that would go to these license holders. Part of that $200 million fund is going to go to the build out and the rental or leasing of the property, but there's also supposed to be some capital included, but you definitely don't completely rely on that, because we're talking about 100 licenses and $200 million. That money flies away.
Yeah, because if you really look at how much it costs just to do a dispensary build out, you know, I mean, you're talking about potentially 1.2 mil for one dispensary. So just imagine, this is why I have an issue with that whole 100 applicants and 200 million, because the budget for New York is 220 billion, like 222 billion. That's the budget for the state. So you're telling me that you like only 200 million can be, you know, like they literally could allocate that money right now and then just get reimbursed, as far as I'm concerned though. But that's a,
I don't think that came from that, because that was private.
yeah, no, that's the other thing. It's not, it's
150 million.
What I wanted to ask you, Nicole, is obviously you've been in hemp for a long time, which obviously allowed you to cross right over into being a THC cultivator. Just so you know, she's the only Black female cultivator.
Mary.
Oh, Mary as well? Okay, oh, Mary, yay, Mary. Yes, in the state, you know, she was growing hemp for a very long time, similarly, and their integration into the THC cultivation to me was just the greatest thing ever. I just thought that was awesome. I was so happy. She called me like 2 days later. It was like, oh my God. So anyway, I loved it. But I wanted to talk about banking, even in hemp. Did you have issues dealing in hemp and banking? And then I want to lead into the next of the steps. Not a lot of water, I drank it all. And then leading into the next steps of securing investment, obstacles, even some of your fears. We've talked a lot about that. So first, hemp and banking, and then securing investment.
Well, hemp and banking was difficult when I got the license, even though I had all of the corporation documents, no one wanted to give me a bank account. It was difficult getting a bank account, even though, because it wasn't federally, it was still part of the
It's cannabis. No matter what it is,
Right,
it's
it was
cannabis.
still-
If you're like, I just talk about cannabis and they see cannabis in your name, they don't want to bank with you.
Yeah.
And hemp is still cannabis. It is not a wholly different plant. It's the same plant.
Well, after the farm bill, it made it a little bit easier, because after the 2018 farm bill, it made it a crop like corn, so it made it a little easier for me to get bank accounts for me. And the 280E, just going back a little bit to that, that is like really important, transitioning and moving from hemp, because everything that I do with hemp has to stay separate from cannabis. So even anything that I buy when it comes to the cannabis side of the business, it will have to be recorded different. And investors, I bootstrap, still
Nicole,
bootstrap.
would you mind using the microphone, please?
I can. As far as investment, if you don't have someone with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, anyone else you can think of rich with their arm around him, no one's giving you millions of dollars for your company. Okay. And if they do, they want too much. I'm bootstrapping, still been bootstrapping. Like, I mean, it's all about what you put into it. I mean, you may get lucky and have someone that really wants to do good business, but I mean, what I see is the money grab for everyone. I mean, and a lot of people are not genuine unless they've been rocking with you from day one. 9 times out of 10, they're in it for what they can get out of it. So just be very careful, be very mindful, and do research. Like, you know, these are just 2 of the bills, but it's also, you know, the Compassionate Care Act, which is the medical law in New York, and then it's the farm bill. So along with those, you know, I have those other ones that I studied too, Saki, and this is where it lies. The laws will tell you what you can and cannot do. You know, and if you don't understand it, you have to find someone. I'm like on my 1,000th read with that. I mean, because every time I read it, I find something different. So, you know, in order to be able to be successful, to be compliant, to be able to study, I mean, to follow the law and what it says you can and cannot do, that is key.
I want to go back. I want to give you some numbers. I want to go back to what Charles said. An average dispensary size is 4,300 square feet. How big is this place, Regina? 2,000. Yeah, this space right here. And it's that big because one of the things you might not think about, you have to vault your money and your flour. This is a cash industry. So you need a vault, not a safe, not a room. You need a vault. You need to have somewhere to store your property. There's all sorts of security, right? So that's the average size. You might be able to go a little smaller, but just think 4,300 square feet. The average construction cost is $100,000 to $200,000. That's for a basic, no, I wish it, a complete square foot. You already-
We can end this right now.
$100,000 to $200,000 to build it out. Very basic. That's not any like Apple Store, fancy schmancy, everything in my place is black, you know, black and gold. This is a basic bodega style build out. 100 to 200,000 based off of security parameters and all the things that you will need. So I'm telling you all this so that you have some basic numbers in your head, not so that you feel daunted, like, shit, I can't afford it, but that you have really real numbers in your head of what this takes to do. And all of these costs are before you buy product. So you haven't even put anything in your store yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just on average, the construction, what I was looking at was per square foot, and it was running anywhere from $150 to $270 per square foot if you have a build out 43. So you can do it.
Was that before or after the pandemic?
No, this is right now.
Okay.
To build it out. But those numbers can easily be, those numbers can easily go up as you do extra things. The security level of your dispensary has to be top notch. Your waiting room and all of that stuff, it has to be secured a certain way. I mean, so it's a lot, and it can cost a lot.
Just to add to that as well, remember, this is going to be extremely regulated. So the Office of Cannabis Management, they're going to be controlling what this is too, though. So we may have regulations that indicate these are the specs for vaults and things of that nature now, but those things are going to continuously be changing. So that's going to also be included in cost though. So I guess, and this goes back to the banking portion too, because even with my company, when we were going for a business account, or a cannabis friendly business account, we had to submit so much paperwork just to even just to even be considered for a business account. I mean, you're talking about your business plan, you're talking about all types of things though. And a lot of these numbers that they're referring to, especially what Saki is referring to, like these are things that you would be budgeting in your business plan, as far as, just your build outs, like all these other things, like how much it's going to cost to get a license, but then how much it's going to cost to become operational, because that's a totally different, beast in itself though. How much is it going to cost to get permits and things of that nature, and again, that business plan has to be flexible because the regulators might come out with something that may increase costs. Like with us for distribution, we're thinking, okay, what are going to be the specs for the transportation bans? Because if you look at other states, that there's literally requirements where safes have to be inside it, or it has to have caging here and things of that nature. All those things are going to cost, and it changes your projections over the course of. So that's something just to be considerate about when we're talking about basics, figuring out what business entity you want to deal with, because there's going to be tax implications for that as well. Like, how often you file your taxes as a corporation are different from how often you file taxes as an LLC, and things of that nature. But also that even if opening up a business account, you still have to have some of that basic things, and those budgeting things are all tied into it. And that all ties into that business plan. So just basic stuff starting off with a business plan, because even if you want to get a bank account, they're going to be asking for that cannabis bank account. They're going to be asking for those things, not just your EIN number, all that stuff, but like a cannabis bank account. It's just higher. The due diligence is just higher, just from my experience.
And that again is where the Harlem Business Alliance comes in
Regina,
as a resource and tool. And I'm saying this to you because I do not want you to feel overwhelmed, like I give up. Y'all just made me want to not do this. Please understand these steps we're telling you these steps so you have a realistic idea, but also know that there are resources in our communities to help make it happen.
Yes, this right here is mainly just for the educational, to get you guys, your heads, start really thinking about this. But Regina, and I love you for this too, though, because he's been an advocate in this space about this. We've had multiple conversations about this, and the goal is to make sure that the community knows that this is a resource center, and we actually have actionable steps and things to set up to make sure that we're walking people through this process. So, so just know that we're just trying to inform you and letting people know like the exact thing. Because what you hear all the time is, oh, the projections of 4.7 billion and revenues, but they're not telling you that this is a nuanced thing, and this is probably going to be one of the highest regulated markets that we have in the state. No, it's going to be the highest, in this, like in the state. You think about tobacco and alcohol, like how they're regulated. This is going to be times 10, in my opinion. So we have to be very mindful of that, because there's licenses that are in hand, and going to the predatory aspect of it. There are larger MSOs, and I've seen this in other jurisdictions, to where they're looking for social equity applicants to screw up. So then 2 years down the road, they can go ahead and snatch that license, that and things of that nature.
In New York, if you have a social equity license, you cannot sell it to an MSO. New York State learned from their troubles with the medical license. You have to sell it to another social equity applicant, and it has to be approved by the OCM. Now, I'm also telling you this because if you want to have the flexibility to, which you should, you have the right to be like, my license is an asset. I want to get it and make this loop and be out. You can't do that if you apply as a social equity.
First 2 years, yeah.
But they're considering making it
Permanent?
Yeah.
Because, and they're getting that because you're seeing in other jurisdictions to where literally it's like a 2 year, 3 year thing, because it takes some time to become operational, so that's the other part. And by the time it gets through all those costs and everything else, on top of 280E and it's just, you have to be very mindful of that.
So, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Tell me, y'all.
Welcome.
Very proud of us.
It's been a tough fight and we're not done. So I want y'all to be real clear that this legislation and the regs really aren't designed to make certain that the creation of thousands of Black-owned businesses are created across the state of New York. Now, we know that we have been harmed for over 50 years, 50, 60 plus, even longer than that, right? And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So when we looked at the regs, my sister partner right here, did the research and whatnot and helped us put together our position paper. We said, who should benefit the most? Those communities and individuals who have been most harmed. It is not unfolding in that fashion, which means that we have to let our elected officials know, our representatives know what they need to do. This shirt I have on, it says disrupt Harlem. How am I interpreting that? What we need to disrupt is the failure of Black-owned businesses in our community. The fact that we don't have thriving Black-owned businesses in this community and other Black communities across the state. So we need to disrupt that in each and every community. But what our elected representatives don't seem to understand is that they're not bringing home money and access to capital that other communities are getting so that they can thrive economically and pass on generational wealth. So I wanted to speak about that because you'll need to let them know, as Charles said, $200 million is no money out of a $220 billion budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
22.
And if you have been one of the most harmed individuals, family members, communities, we should have forgivable loans. Why are we going into debt? Why are we paying taxes? Why are we having a difficult time getting these licenses? It's because we're not pushing hard enough and we're not speaking the right language. And the right language is most harm. If they come at you with people of color and minorities, a sister sat here at a workshop that we had and talked about how the Armenians got a license in her community in California before she did. And she was a community resident. Okay, so when they talk about minorities, they're talking about everybody except for white boys. And they get into through white women. And we need to understand what the game is and how we've been tricked and bamboozled. So we have to be vocal and we have to be very specific in our language. What are you bringing home to Black people? And if it's not enough, they need to go back and they need to get some more. And I'm telling you right now, it's not enough. This isn't nearly enough money for the harm that we have suffered and continue to suffer.
So to be clear, this is justice harmed, not Black community. So if you are white and you have a record, you can get this. okay? If you are Black and have a partner who's white, they can get it. So this, just be clear, this is not a race-based conditional license. This is based on being part of the justice system. And I'm saying that because she said communities most harmed, and this is based off of being involved in the justice system, not being part of the community most harmed, okay? I just want to make sure you all have that clarifying point.
Okay, so moving forward, and Regina, thank you for coming up here, your presence.
And again, remember, she is a resource for all of those things that we've been speaking about. You need to write a business plan. You don't know what a pro forma is. You don't know what a profit projection sheet is.
That's actually what I was gonna get into next.
So go on.
Do you, no, it's fine. Do you have your basic ducks in a row? Speak, please. That's basically what it is. Do you have your ducks in a row? Do you have a business plan? Yeah. Have you
Hold
even
on.
looked in that direction?
Stop. Do you
Do you
know-
understand? Do you
And
understand what a
this
business
is no
plan is?
shade, no shade. If you don't know, this is where you come to find out. How many people in the room know what a business plan is? How many people in the room have produced a business plan for another business? Okay. How many people have access to somebody who can help them write a business plan? Everybody should be raising their hand because we just said that Regina is in access
To all of those things.
right?
To all of those things, which is what I've been saying all night. She has been instrumental in our application process, which is why we are here today. Thank you very much, Regina. We love you, Regina. Trust me. So basic ducks in a row further. Do you have an organizational chart for your business? Yes, sir.
Before you go further, Harlem Business Alliance, all of you who have not RSVP'd, gave us your email address, you will now get announcements for you for your training and all these things that the guys are speaking of. Business plans, anything that has to do with business, that's what we do. And so you'll get these announcements, so just stay tuned. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There is something that, well, that's why I wanted you to even get into investments, because today there's an event called MJ Unpacked in town. It's actually starting today, and it's through Friday. And it really is for retailers, investors, and exhibitors, product like myself. I should be there, but I'm here with you. I should be an exhibitor at that convention. But in general, those events like that, they're not common. You have to be in the know, as they say, you have to just be in the loop and in the mix. Hence why somebody like her is moving and shaking throughout the day. She almost couldn't make it here, but she also was dedicated to make sure she spent time with you. So you can talk about MJ Unpacked and even why you're leaving us so early.
Yeah, MJ Unpacked is an event where a bunch of brands host their products, like Simon said, and it's a real good networking event. Investors, people that are in the industry, and they have different levels that you can get in. It's cheap. Huh?
It's not free.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like $600. So, and I had someone sponsor me. They also having like another event with a concert with, I think, some artists. But my main objective was to go there and just represent my company, the network, and to meet, people from all over that I haven't met yet. But if anyone has any questions for me, I can answer questions before I go. I can also share my social media contact and my email address. So if anyone wants to send me an email and ask me any questions. The other thing that was not mentioned is, as far as the cultivation, there are 3 things that we're required to do with this license. And one is sign a labor peace agreement with a bona fide labor organization. The other thing is to create a waste management plan as far as how you plan on reducing your waste or controlling your waste with cannabis. And then the other thing is a mentorship program. So if you come under a mentor that is a cultivator, such as myself, or such as Miss Mary, I think she stepped out, but you may have the ability to get a license, to grow possibly. I wouldn't say that, but I would say that, it can give you some added points when you go to apply for your license. I would say that. So this young man had a question.
Oh, yes, it is a wealth of knowledge. I see I gotta go back to school to really absorb all of this. But my first question is, if you don't mind me asking, it's not too personal. Was your motivation financial?
Of
Or
course,
was it strictly financial?
mainly, but it was to build generational wealth for me and my family. Instead of being a consumer, being an owner, as spending $1,000 in the dispensary your first run, it's like a disadvantage,
Okay. And my next question, and that's the B part. When you put this together, can they have like a federation of say 10 black men, or do they all have to get the license? Or would it be sufficient for one to have the license and the other 10 is part of the business?
Is this cultivation?
Yeah, well,
I'm talking about all aspects. Okay. Whatever how you do this.
I think they'll have
You already said
incubators.
it's about money.
Yeah, I think they'll have incubators where you can be part of like a group that, that has a grow, has a process of, cooperative in a sense. And then the other thing is that with this, you really don't have to go back to school because we all did it. So, you can learn from
No,
the
I'm talking
people.
about absorbing the information.
Oh, well,
There's
yeah.
a lot of, you have to absorb it. It's like being back in a college class. You have to need a highlight pen, and you have to absorb, because I have multiple questions. I definitely want your card, because I put something in motion and I don't want to get robbed. I just want to add on to what she said too. Okay. There's actually a licensed class for cooperatives or whatnot. So if you organize a group of individuals, there's two separate license classes for cooperatives. One where it goes all the way to the retail dispensary piece, where you can have up to three locations, meaning you can do processing, you can do cultivation, you can do distribution for your own portion, and then the retail space up to 3, and then there's a separate one for that. But if you're trying to organize, like they actually have a license class for that particular thing, to where you could have a group of individuals, but you would have to be organized properly like an actual co-op. But do the employees have to be licensed too, or can you? No, it's not necessarily your employees. Again, it's your company is licensed that. So that means that if you have a distribution company and you have drivers, not every individual driver has to be licensed. They're gonna have to show some type of proof that they represent a company that is licensed, type of thing, though. So it's like that, but we can talk about it. I got the gist. I'm sure somebody else got it. Yes.
Basically, she does have to leave. I'd like her to give out her email. Please take her information. I don't know if you have cards just to pass out on the way out. The reason I'm doing that is because we're gonna have a Q&A at the end for the rest of us, and that seemed to be a broad question, not just for her. So if you have questions specifically for her, please make sure you reach out to her directly. We do have to make sure she gets out of here, as well as we want to move on with the rest of the panel. We only have 29 minutes left, and there's a lot that we're trying to unpack here.
So my email, I can give my email. It's info@naheus.com. And then my company's name is Nahi, NAHE LLC. My website is www.naheus.com. And on Instagram, I am Nahi Farms. And I am Nicole Jai. So my last name is spelled N as in Nancy, D as in David, IAYE. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clap it up for Nicole. MJ Unpacked, I'm really disappointed that I'm not there myself, but like her, I felt like I needed to be here and we needed to deliver this. Well, you're actually next because really, I'm sorry, my sister, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, the Power Four is what I've been calling them, the top 4 licenses that people seem to be attracted to is cultivation, retail, distribution, and delivery. But there's a lot of licenses out there, even more than that. And Charles is really well versed on that. So I wanted him to talk about that, but it's really about choosing your niche and finding what's really going to make sense for you. What I always told people in the music business, you don't have to be on the microphone, you don't have to DJ to make money in that business. So you don't have to put your hand on the plant. You don't have to sell the plant. You don't have to deliver it to make money in this business and still establish the generational wealth that we're trying to establish.
to literally piggyback off of that, because listen, realistically, it's impossible for everybody to be able to get licenses, you know? There's no way we're gonna have 3,000 dispensaries here, you know, in Harlem type of thing though. So that's never, you just have to be realistic about it. And then also too, just, you gotta remember that this is a brand new industry, you know, a brand new industry, meaning that the whole industry is wide open. So if you have a background in marketing, if you have a background in art, you know, if you have a background in just in PR, I mean, it's literally security. I mean, it's all types of things that you can really address or whatnot when it comes to this. Then approach that. Like even like I said with my startup, we're focusing on the tech space of it because, you know, cannabis is literally, it's a plant. So you're talking about advocating for STEM subjects, you know, so you're talking about tech, you're talking about agriculture, you're talking about the research and development, which is going to be needed as well, which is why federal, you know, regulations and stuff like that are important to deschedulize, because it opens the door for research and development, things of that nature, the sciences aspects of it, because we really don't know the full understanding of this plant and the benefits or the detriment that it has, you know, and that's going to be a continuous education piece though. But just going to this point, there's and this is something that you can find on OCM as well. This is where I was talking about the fact sheets and things of that nature. So if you go to Cannabis, www.cannabis.ny.gov, they literally have the adult use license types that break down license type, a brief description, and then the ownership limits. Because the brother that was talking earlier asking about, you know, how can, you know, we get involved as far as all the different type of licenses, there's restrictions, you know, depending on, especially right now, the initial restrictions, but that will give you an idea of the different type of classes. If you decide to go for a license, or then you might decide, you know what, I don't want to have to deal with a license, but I want to still participate in the market. You know, I want to organize some educational, you know, components or, you know, workshops or whatever, or I want to do corporate responsibility and consulting with some of these larger MSOs. It's a myriad of things that you can do, but I just want to just throw out a couple, I mean, just a few of them. So as you guys know, the adult use cultivator is what we've been talking about. I think that we've, you know, at least addressed that to that point though, but there's also a adult use conditional cultivator that allows you those same accesses or whatnot, but then it's only until June 1st of next year, as far as that conditional piece though, but you can apply for a full-time one. That's one piece though. I don't know I'm trying to see how I'm gonna do this. Adult use nurseries, that's a licensed class in itself. So you're talking about, and what is adult use nursery? So you're talking about with the cultivators, you know, you have the clones, the seeds and things of that nature. The adult use nurseries literally focus on those pieces though, as far as what a cultivator is going to need, and you will be able to sell to a cultivator. That's a separate license
And
class.
potentially a retail store.
Yes.
Because one of the things that we're working on in regulation, home grow is part of New York State law.
Yes.
You got to get they're not going to let you have seeds, but you got to get clones, right?
Mhm.
And so there are nurseries there are basically, and this is, I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry. Everything you want to do, you need to advocate for the way you want the regulations to work, right? So there are already people in cultivation who are fighting to be able to sell directly to you, the consumer, and not have to sell to a retailer to sell their clones. Sorry.
Yes. Yes. Every license class that they have, there's going to be regulations for it, and every license class is going to have a public commenting period, which is literally the time for us to make our noise and concerns about all this stuff. So like dispensaries right now is open, conditional, that's why they're conditional licenses. And we have till May 31st as a community, as a state, to make any comments that we feel need to be necessarily made as far as changes, adjustments, you know, recommendations, things of that nature. I just want to let y'all know, but all of these, including nursery, when it comes out, they're going to have that. But that's just another license class that you actually have, a nursery a license class. Adult use processor. Processor is simply a manufacturer. So if you're coming up with a brand, if you want to create an edibles brand, or you want to create, you know, yeah, really any type of manufacturing that you're dealing with. But I always think of edibles. So like if you're trying to come up with a gummies company or whatever, tinctures, all that stuff, you would have to get a processor's license. You know,
is that included a lab?
No, lab testing, you're talking about like lab testing?
Extracts.
Oh, yeah, extracts, yeah, all that. It's any of those things. So literally what it says is processor means a licensee that extracts concentrated cannabis and or compounds, blends, extracts, infuses, or otherwise manufacture concentrated cannabis or cannabis products. So we're talking about manufacturers. But that's a separate license class, that's a class that you can literally go for. And what it tells you too is when it comes to ownership limits, it lets you know for each class where like nursery, you can only have one of those licenses. Or if you have a processor license, you can actually get a distribution license paired with it, but you can only distribute your own product. So you can't use a distribution license to supplement, income type of thing, or let me help somebody else out with my distribution license. It's only for your own license though. And it literally lists out too, processor may not own or have any interest in licenses in the cannabis retail tier. So they're really trying to keep things separate to where if you have a retail license, you're in that space, because again, that's a whole other conversation. As far as the vertical, the MSOs can have a vertically licensed type of situation or whatever, but but now, when we're talking about social equity and bringing things back to communities.
But that goes back to advocacy again,
Yes.
because the MSOs, which stands for multi-state organization or operator, sorry, they hold the majority of the medical licenses in the state.
Oh, no, they all of them.
Well, Etain isn't considered a multi-state organization, and that's one. Etain was recently bought out. Thank you for correcting me. So yes, all of them. But previous to that, we had one that was not. But the point is that advocates have been fighting to make sure in the adult use market that the multi-state operators cannot translate their vertical programming into the adult use market.
And the reason why is because you'll see in other jurisdictions like Illinois and like California, New Jersey as well, these MSOs have been predatory, or they said that they're going to come in and do certain things for communities and never did it. That's why I give a shout out to John Bailey in Colorado, where they've organized like a report card type of thing, to where these companies are held to certain standards, and there's a report card type of thing, and if they haven't met these requirements that they said that they would do, then you go after their licensing, or you report them to the state and things of that nature. And I really think that we need to have something of that mechanism here as well, not just for MSOs, but also for our own selves too. But just so I can, because I know we're short on time, but processors, manufacturing licenses is one. Distribution, which we talked about, is one of the more common ones too, and that's just dealing with the B2B aspect, meaning that you can transport, possess, sell, at a wholesale level or whatnot between the license classes, the business license classes, but you can't deliver to a consumer because that's a separate license class. That's a delivery license class. Let me see, there's the adult use cooperative. That's a separate license class, so what you were talking about, brother, about organizing 10 Black men to, maybe you have some people that are good in transportation, you have some people that are good in this or agriculture, whatever. You guys can organize a co-op and actually go for a license, collectively.
But you won't be able to sell it
yes.
in a retail store.
Yes, you won't be able to sell it to a retail store because there's nuances.
As a retail store.
There's nuances to it, of course. But then when those regulations come out, advocacy for all of them. You have to look to see, because these are the things that you're going to be held by. If you know that this isn't help you in your community, or you know that this is something that makes sense, let them we have to let them know, because OCM has been very clear about this too. They know that they have a very serious task at hand, and what they're attempting to do is, they know it's not going to be perfect, but they know that they have to start somewhere. So these regulations and things of that nature are just starting points. They're not the end all be all. They become the end all be all if we decide not to participate in like the civic engagement aspect, and we decide not to make any comments during a public commenting period, and then wait until the final regulations come up and say, oh, why are they doing this or why are they doing that? You have to ask yourself, did you even make a comment and concern about that? Did you let them know? Because it might not have been brought to their attention, but they're definitely trying to do that, and until they show otherwise, we're going to hold them to that standard though.
And the comment board for retail right now is May
May 31st. So you can go on OCM's website right now. You know, you can literally, you can email them personally if you wanted to, you know, with your comments type of thing though. But that's till May 31st. It's a 60-day thing. It's been open, but it's not going to be, you know, circulated, you know.
It's May 18th today.
Yes, May 18th, you know, type of thing. So we got to be really, really serious about that and just mindful that we have to participate. But adult use micro business is another one. That's one where a lot of people get confused, because if you look at it, it looks as if that's like a vertically integrated type of situation, you know, as far as just being able to have, you know, the different access to the different tiers. However, there's a cap. There's a limit to it though. There's a monthly limit and things of that nature. So you can't just have, you know, 50,000 pounds of cannabis, you know.
Wow, 50,000.
I know, I'm just throwing out a number,
Wow.
you know, because I know, for instance, in Jersey, there's a cap on their micro licenses where you can only have 25, you can only be in a 2,500 square foot location, and there's limits to the amount of cannabis you can actually have in possession and sell each month, you know?
So I hate to do this to you. I know you're running out of time.
Yeah.
The brother here just said 50,000 pounds. I need to give you.
It was a
perspective.
hypothetical, you guys.
If you guys are going to do cannabis business, please learn cannabis. Right now, in the gray market, dispensaries that are doing well are selling 30 to 40 pounds a week. Okay? 50,000 is.
Well, Chapo made that stuff up.
Yeah, I think I was just throwing out a number just for a second. I think the point is that there's a cap, period though. There's a cap. So just because you get a micro license and you have access to be able to process, to cultivate, to distribute, there's a cap on it. You know, that's the other part too. And you can only have one of those type of licenses, micro business licenses though. So that's something to consider. But I'm just going through this, the various classes, because a lot of people, we only talk about 4, but there's actually 8 license classes. 9, yeah, 9 license classes. So you're talking about adult use dispensaries, as I mentioned before. That's a popular one. And there's also nuance to that. You can have up to, let me say, three dispensaries or whatnot under that one license class type of thing though. But again, remember what we talked about as far as budgeting and financing, like how much it costs just to open up one, you know? And remember, we're in Harlem too. So another thing that we didn't talk about in the legislation, there is a requirement, a distancing requirement when it comes to schools and when it comes to churches. Like, and which is another conversation we're gonna have. Yeah, 500 feet and 300, yeah, 200 for
House of worship.
yeah, house of worship. And we, yeah. And we live in Harlem, so y'all know there's literally something on every block. So we're talking about, okay.
Oh, and you can't be on a side street. So if you're like, oh, they don't got something on 116. No, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because it's considered a side street. You have to be on a major thoroughfare.
And so
we promise we're gonna come to you.
Yeah, we have to think about that part too, though. So when you're talking about, do I want to go for a dispensary license? You have to see, is that even something that's realistic for me to do here though? And also the work that goes into dealing with a dispensary, you know, like, so the point is, it's just, there's multiple different license classes, types of classes, and on-site consumption, which is, I'm so glad that's one of the last ones, because it goes back to it's a ripple effect that I mentioned before about the banking, because if you're taking federal funding, you can't do certain things. So even when it comes to the home growth, as far as having plants, if you live in NYCHA buildings, you cannot have any plants type of stuff though, which like literally that, and no one's saying these
things. And the city can't do anything about that. So even though the law has created this protection for parents and housing, cannot protect you from the federal government.
Exactly.
I think Mayor Adams was like, we need to be planting on top of the project.
Yeah, exactly. Which you know that he hasn't read anything about it. That's the other part. Like, we can't. And so going to consumption sites, which mean that those consumption sites, those are going to be something very important too when it comes to the NYCHA buildings and things of that nature, because now you're talking about a particular set of individuals that are being disenfranchised from this law, and how do we make sure that everyone's able to participate? Consumption sites around those areas are going to be stuff that's going to be popping up, and if you don't want that around those those particular areas, we're going to have to speak up about it, you know.
And let's be clear, because I want a consumption space.
And we all do.
But
gotta be smart about it.
they're not free. It's not a free service. So it's like, hey, I'm proposing to Community Board 10 that I'm gonna open this consumption space within the legal parameters of XYZ projects, because they're not gonna be able to smoke in their homes, but they can come here and maybe they can grow their flower here or whatever. I'm still gonna charge you to come into my consumption space to have that. So it's not like I'm providing a free service out of the kindness of my heart, because I love my peoples. You know, we have to remember that these are all business opportunities.
Absolutely.
And where the spirit of the law was written, because they know that there's that federal stipulation, it's not a free service, and these businesses aren't getting support from the state to provide a free service.
And even throwing in community board piece too, because you're talking about licenses, so it's gonna have to, and in the law, it says that you have to actually go through community boards for letters of support and things of that nature, but you just going to them just say, or going to us saying that one thing, no, because now you're talking about, you have letters of support from your block organization, you have letters of support for the individuals there, like, you know, all types of stuff though. So it's just, like I said, things to consider, but again, there's multiple different license classes. So it's not just necessarily, okay, oh, well, I need to open up a dispensary. Oh, I need to do, you know, I want to grow it. I want to be a cultivator. Like this, like we literally have a cultivator here. She tells you it's gardening is the fun part, but actually farming is the help part. Like we have to be considerate of all those spaces though. But the larger thing I want to point out is that yes, there's license classes, but we're going to need participation in ancillary businesses. And if we're talking about social equity and we're talking about bringing economic empowerment to a community, that means that we have to be able to have equity in all aspects of the market, to where we can keep a dollar funneling in within a community. So if I'm a distribution company and I know that this brother here has marketing, I can reach out to them about marketing. I know this sister right here focuses on you know, event planning and things of that nature. I can refer, you know, those type of things. Or if we have a dispensary that needs to be connected with, you know, cultivators or marketing, you know, it's, as you see, it's a symbiotic relationship, and that's what we need to be mindful of. So we can't have an oversaturation of people trying to get licenses, because you may not want to have to go that route. You may be able to contribute to the market in a totally different form or fashion, and we're going to need that. So that's what I wanted to point out.
Okay, so I had to confirm with Regina, because we are running out of time, and we're not even halfway through the stuff that I really want to cover. So Regina did say that we will do a part 2 to this workshop. And that's awesome. That's awesome. We will do a part 2 to this. I will make sure that Nicole. We're gonna do a series of these. So at that point, because we don't have a lot of time, I have to open it up for questions, but I had to make sure that we covered at least certain topics, and I got the goal that we were gonna come back. So we will come back with the rest of the stuff. And who has questions? Dave, talk to me.
All right, let's say you start a company that encompasses cultivation, retail, and dispensary. Can't do that?
No, I actually just had a conversation with my attorney yesterday to confirm. So the language in the law says no direct or indirect financial gain in any other licensed structure. So unless you are in a cooperative, which doesn't allow you to have your own retail, or you are a micro business, you're not going to be allowed to do that. Now, if you have a great attorney who can work some magic and create some kind of agreement, and you have a great accountant that can, you know, hide your involvement in the company, but the way that the law is written, you cannot be part of a company. So if I took my company and it was me and Tariq and Charles on the company, and I got a consumption license, and then as a business, as a company, we wanted to go for retail, I have to remove myself from the company.
But to be all honest, too, though, a lot of the stuff that we see now may not necessarily be the case 5 years from now, too, though.
Okay, wait.
So that's,
I'm confused because
ahead.
all right, I've researched a lot of different companies that are out there, like cookies and things from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Aren't they retailers?
But it's slightly different though, because cookies, for instance,
They're multi-state
multi-state
So
operators.
you
and
have to be an SO to do
they do different things. they have to apply to different rules in different states. So in this state, they can't cultivate and retail and
So
do
it can
it.
never be a one-stop shop, basically.
Nope, not unless you're a micro business or a cooperative.
Or unless you're already in the medicinal program and you're
Which you're
already
not.
operating in. So like going to our point, like if you go to Cookies in Florida, because they just opened up stuff there. If you go, and I'm saying this because of speaking to governmental affairs folks that work there, their process there is totally different. Like if you're talking to the people in California, Colorado, every jurisdiction is different because remember, it's not federally legal. So have the
Just
ability
like
to,
alcohol.
just like alcohol. Every state will still have the ability to either opt into it or not, or create their own type of rules when it comes to it.
So basically, we still have to wait for the feds to put their stamp in.
No, well, it's when you say you have to wait, it depends on what you're talking about waiting. You don't have to wait for New York. You know, but if you're in another,
It's legal, but
yeah, but if you're in another state and you're talking about.
But even if it becomes federally legal,
Still got-
the way it is in New York, you will not be able to have a cultivation and a
Exactly.
retail
for the
and
same
a
company.
consumption by the same company.
Unless you fall under the exceptions that was mentioned earlier.
Give me a second. The gentleman in the back, yes.
Now, you mentioned the comment period for the dispensaries is closing on the 31st.
Yes.
Conditional use adult use dispensary retail.
Right, now, I think there's a 500, 200 foot restriction on those locations, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And can you send in comments about having them redo that formula? Why is that?
They are making that final determination up to the municipalities. So what is the New York City law on that?
I don't know.
But that's what I'm saying. So the state put this 500, 200, but say New York City has a bigger distance.
They're like,
They're letting the municipalities decide that.
So do you know who do you comment about the site restriction in New York City?
Your,
well,
no,
no,
your
oh, you're
city,
talking about site restrictions.
you talk to, so this actually, that segues to something I was gonna say. You wanna get in this business, you really wanna do this, and this is a question you were gonna say earlier, you need to start talking to your police department, talking to your CEC boards, talking to your, city councilor? City councilor.
You need lobbyists.
Don't get a lobbyist.
No
It costs a
lobbyist.
lot of money.
No.
You have to be your own lobbyist.
Advocates like Stocky, I have an advocate I work very closely with. I think that they're also very important. Continue your questions.
Well, because, cities, neighborhoods that have been impacted by the war on drugs, they have a lot of churches and schools
Oh, yeah.
as a response to that social trauma.
Oh, yeah.
So how are they now going to turn around and be penalized by not allowing dispensaries in there because of the existence of these other supportive institutions?
You gotta talk to your faith-based communities, and unfortunately, because we demonized drugs in our community and we put the response of that into the hands of law enforcement instead of community itself, we have to take responsibility for that. Our own officials, our own parents and grandparents sat in rooms and said, send these little children to jail because they're selling crack on the corner. They're smoking weed in the hallway. We did that. So we have to fix that problem as a community. We as a community have to go to our faith-based areas and say, I need a waiver because I want to open this dispensary and I want this dispensary to change the stigma in our neighborhood. We cannot rely on the government to do things because when we do that, we harm ourselves. We have to take that responsibility back. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be yelling at you.
No, it's passion. It's not yelling. It's passion. It's passion.
I'm advocating for everybody to get involved.
Sure, absolutely.
Because in New York, they have looked at the mistakes of other states.
Of course.
And are trying to be halfway responsive to correct some of the mistakes so that they don't start them.
And this is
Put things in place like DASNY so that people who are applying don't have to pay rent before they get a license.
Whoa, that's not the thing. They will still have to pay rent. The state is the leaseholder. See, these are things, you are creating a partnership with the state. You're getting a loan from the state, which could be waived, but as of right now, it's being called a loan. And that's one of the things you can bring up in public comment. We gave away a whole bunch of loans as federal taxpayers to a whole bunch of small businesses who didn't have to pay them back during COVID. So we can make the same kind of demand in our public comment period, because 200 million is not enough and they're not paying your rent.
And one thing, hold on, just one thing though, that's going to her point, and this is something I mentioned earlier as well. Like I said, we've dealt with a lot of trauma in this community. When we're talking about the impact on the war on drugs, accountability is going to be a major thing on our end. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But another thing that we're working on here, just as far as Harlem's concerned, because I can only talk about Harlem right now, is that we're organizing that dialogue and that conversation with the faith-based organizations. Because like I said, I'm chair for public safety, but my vice chair is a pastor. And we've literally had those conversations to where we need to be able to have that dialogue, and we need to be able to dispel some of the negative stigmas, some of the miseducation, but also hear the concerns of the faith-based organizations and see how it's going to mesh. Because again, like you pointed out and what I pointed out, I think we're all seeing, it's each of these communities impacted by the war on drugs are going to be very unique and different. And particularly in New York State, just because of how brothers were treated in Syracuse is not going to be the same way they were treated in Harlem and Queens and things of that nature. Our concerns are totally different. And one thing that we have to do is mobilize as a community to make sure that those concerns are addressed, which is why that's going to be one of the other things too, addressing that with the faith-based organizations. Because again, coming to a community board when you're trying to get approval, or you're trying to get a letter of approval, because now you have to kind of go through a similar SLA application process. Those organizations, SLA is the state liquor authority. So these businesses that have liquor licenses, they have to go through community board economic development and get a letter of support. But also a part of that letter of support is the questions about what the community thinks too, including faith-based organizations and things of that nature. So we're going to have those conversations and dialogues as a community, especially, and now it's really, the onus is really on us, because it's not about if it's going to happen, it's about when the market's going to open up. Because we already knew this was going to be, we knew this was going to happen, but we just didn't know when, especially with the Cuomo situation, things of that nature. But nevertheless, we still have to have those conversations, and we plan on having them here in the community.
And it's not going anywhere.
And of course it's not.
The brother said earlier, this is a new industry. I'm sorry, Tariq.
No, it's not a problem. These conversations are what we plan on having in these series, but these are the types of things that you need to be a part of on a regular basis, and whether they're workshops, they're trainings, or just networking. They could be the conventions are popping up here in New York almost every other month.
Yeah.
There are plenty of other organizations that do things like this that you need to be a part of. There's a gentleman in the back, he's taking pictures. He has his own event called First Fridays. And with stuff like that, if you go to events like that, you'll start to be around other people that want to share information with you, just like the people up here. One of the reasons I love Saki is you see how passionate she is. She doesn't even ingest the plant. She's allergic to cannabis. Do you understand? That's why she, to me, is even more special outside of wanting to teach and share information with the world and social justice advocate for us. Question, we got two more questions. You had a question.
Real quick, first I want to say thank you, Regina, just like, and everybody that's here, because, it's important whether you are an advocate for cannabis or not, that we mobilize everybody that has the opportunity to get a license to get one, because that means that's jobs, that's money, that's income staying in our community. So, it's not just about people who like to smoke weed. It's about an opportunity to keep money in our community for good. And my question is, with the conditional licenses that are coming out, how does dispensary and consumption work together? Are they going to be paired?
Nope.
Is it going to be one?
Nope.
No.
One or the other.
So in Jersey, you're allowed to have a dispensary and have that consumption license together, whatever. But here in New York, like we've been mentioning, everything is separate. So if you're going for a consumption site, you can have up to 3 consumption sites actually under that license. If you're going for a dispensary, can have up to 3, but they're
You have an idea
separate.
how consumption works if you buy it here?
Oh, no, no, well, actually, under that license, you're allowed to purchase there,
So if that
you know,
means
so,
you can, that means it
yeah,
is
you-
retail.
But there's a limit.
yes.
And then, so again, this is another thing that's gonna come out in regulation. Ideally, they would like for you not to have your retail space and your consumption space in the same space, right?
Is it a liability thing?
No,
Security thing?
I don't think it's liability or security. Honestly, a lot of these regulations, this is my opinion, this is my educated opinion. A lot of these regulations are based because this is a vice. This is a sin. This is a drug. And we are regulating it so that you don't overconsume, so that you don't participate in dangerous druggy activity like buying a whole bunch of weed and getting blasted next door and then walking into the streets and doing something horrible that is children.
Yeah, so that's the conversations people have been having. So you might
But
see
that's a
it,
vice.
you might see it to where these consumption lounges are gonna be similar to bars or similar to membership clubs and things of that nature. I mean, so it's still open, you know, because we don't know. It might be similar to hookah lounges. I mean, we're not 100% sure though, but we do know right now certain things as far as like I said, you're gonna see consumption lounges closer to some of these nicer buildings.
Will consumption lounge be a part of this first?
No.
No, it's because it's a
Consumption
separate class.
lounge-
It's separate. It's
It'll
a
be
separate
one of the
license, so it's
last-
entirely different license. Yeah.
So consumption lounges will probably be cooperative licenses, micro businesses, and consumption licenses will probably be one of the last licenses to be presented for public comment.
But you said that there will be a retail aspect of consumption, correct?
Yes, but it's not regulated yet, like how much you can have, when you can
Yeah.
sell. It might be set up like alcohol where you can't sell after 4 in the morning. You
Will
can't
that-
have a certain
Will that come
amount.
out during the comment?
Every license is gonna have a public commenting period because it's required by law for them to have it. It's in the MARTA or whatnot.
Unless they bring it through legislation.
Of course, because there's always loopholes in legislation.
Last question.
Quick thing, if you have a retail operation, say you have a backyard in the back and people want to smoke.
No,
So it's gonna be, because for quite a few reasons though. Because you're talking about having an open space, but then you're talking about with your home, you know, like, because remember, right now it's legal in the state, but it's not legal in the state because there's no regulations to regulate how these things are going. So technically they can,
Smoke, but not to sell.
yeah, you can, and even, technically you can do that, yes.
So
You can consume, but like Manhattan DA's office and all them
you're
say,
not gonna be able to consume anywhere where there's alcohol.
yes.
You're not
that's
gonna be
one
able to
thing.
purchase anywhere where there's
You're
alcohol.
still technically not supposed to do it in public settings like parks and things of that nature.
In
There's
New
a
York
lot,
City.
yeah, in New York City, you know, but there's a lot of nuances that are going to be ironed out because, like I said, new industry. They have a office of cannabis management that they're still hiring, like, you know, for
We
like.
don't have a social equity
No,
officer.
no social equity officer. The advisory board that's mentioned in the legislation, they just started appointing people. So I mean, you're talking about like a regulated situation that they're still trying to build up. So whatever we're doing now is not, it's all going to be temporary because they're really going to be laying down the hammer on it. So I don't even want to encourage you to even start trying to start doing it, because the minute they really start, like, you know, focusing on people,
Right.
you know, that can get you jammed up as far as even getting a license, you know, that type of thing.
Last question.
Okay. Confused, so much information has been shared. At the beginning, we talked about licenses in general. And I heard that you can have a partner, as long as one of the partners is the H, you're preferred, right? So you have a partner, you have 51%.
You have 51%. So
Okay.
you were going for the
Let me
license.
finish the question, and you can give me all the information that I need. So now, I'm 51%. Is my partner, does he have to be under the same, or she, under the same classification? that she-
Yes.
Okay, so I was gonna say, if you have independently wealthy person, that does that work. Okay, so everybody has to be under the H classification. Okay.
And this is for dispensary. That's what we were referring to, the dispensary requirements, because that's what the licenses, I mean, the conditional licenses regulations that are out now. For if you want to do a dispensary, these are the requirements that you would have to go through. If you want to do cultivation, these are the requirements. Those are the only two classes so far. I just want to point that out.
Be very clear. They are checking where you're getting all your money from. They are checking all of your investors. And if you have investors that are on other license plans, they're gonna pull those other license holders, they're gonna pull those license holders up and they're gonna scrutinize them. So all of your money, all of your partners, they're gonna check your background. Part of being the most regulated industry in this country means that they fine tooth you. And if you got a hater in your life who knows that you skirted a little something other, they will report you. And you will be the first person they look at to scrutinize. Okay? Because they assume everybody who's going into this business is trying to do something dirty. Because it's dirty business.
Well, listen, we want to thank everybody who has come out tonight and spent some time with us. Sure, it is important that these specific people, along with Nicole, as knowledgeable as they are, as much as information that we like to give you, that we're not doing it to an empty room. So we appreciate all the RSVPs. We appreciate everybody that's viewing on Zoom. And really, once again, would like to thank MAD Community Board number 10, Regina and the Harlem Business Alliance for allowing us to put this together. Be on the lookout for the next step in our series, okay? And Saki's got one last word, as usual.
I want to make one statement. It doesn't have directly to do with cannabis. It has to do with us as people being targeted. Buffalo hit the attack on the tops in Buffalo this weekend. Hit me personally very hard. I walked through the streets. I know that we had a shooting on our subway down here. We've had shootings in Amarillo, Texas, you know, and I just keep replaying the history. And one of the catalysts for me was when Dylan Root went into one of our churches.
Sat down with them for hours.
Sat down, prayed with them, assassinated them, and left one person alive to tell the story. This person went into one of our supermarkets that was hard fought for. And I bring that here because we are hard fighting for an industry to come to our communities. We are targets. Please watch each other's backs. Please help build each other up. This industry is very cutthroat. This industry is very competitive. These are your people. This is your community. Support each other. Help to kill this stigma while bringing this money back into our community. We are targets. So please, can we support each other?
It has the same number on it. We have two of them. Sorry.
We're like, So this week I'm doing bargaining, after 5 I don't know how long I'm gonna have you working on this little thing. Last week would have been perfect because I was like,
I know I want to get.
What's your name?
I don't need more email, man.
I'll do it for you.
Let's try to card. All right, so because I told Curtis that I was. I know he was going to. I was like, oh, that's why I'm going to get off here. Also, I'm talking to I'm here to rock. Yeah. I feel like you realize how much it's probably like right after. Really doing it at a level where he's already kind of walked out the model. It's on the campus control. Yeah, so I feel like I have talked. I just, yeah, I know, it's a lot. It's a lot going on. Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna call like now tomorrow. Yeah, on my phone, text me. First got my cell to man. I got it. All right. Yes.